Okay, on this 13th edition of the Mr. Peter Parker podcast, we got Tito in here.
Yes, sir. What up?
My man, today we're going to talk to the legendary Danny Boy O'Connor of House of Pain, of the Coka Nostra. I saw him in the Kid 90 documentary. We're going to talk about sobriety, this outsider's house that he's curating out in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I mean,
I've been looking forward to this one.
Stories, man. This is a legend.
House of Pain mug.
Yo, dude, look, I think he's going to tap in. Hold on. Welcome to the program, my friend.
Lucky number 13. What's not to love?
Come on, man. Yo,
good morning.
You and me, last time I linked with you was on the set of Slane's 99 Bottles video shoot.
Wow.
A while ago.
You know what? The days are slow and decades go quick, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
They really do. We were talking about that last week.
That's wild.
Amazing experience. I remember being in like this, we shot it in this small bar in like somewhere in like Boston area. And it was a really, really fun day. I blew it, Tito. Slane says, come down to the shoot. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna come hang out. And I was going to Harlem in New York a lot at the time. And I had a purple Red Sox hat on, I remember. And I show up and everybody's gooned out in Celtics gear and like black hats. I'm like, I can't be in this video, dog. I was like, I love you guys, but I'm not gonna do this to y'all, man. When you watch the video and you watch it, I'm right next to the camera or like in the booth. I'm like right there with Danny when he was directing the video, but there's no fucking way I was going there with the purple hat on. Congratulations to you, Danny. First and foremost, your history. I was telling you off the air. Me and Tito are day one House of Pain fans. You know what I mean? When I hear you guys talked about as one-hit wonders, sometimes it hurts my heart because all three albums are great, front to back listen.
Definitely.
They're classic albums. I argued with a kid in Minnesota, like, House of Pain. I was like, hold on, bro. I was like, this is our childhood. Like, this is like, and you go back and listen, second album's my favorite. I love the second album. I love the vibe on it.
I'm going to tell you, the first one is always going to be my one because it's like your first love. You know, it's the first. After that, it was all business. So,
of course, yeah.
You know, and by the time it was the third, it wasn't even House of Pain in my book. So
it was different.
And it's a great record. Listen, it's a great record. It's not a House of Pain record. It's an Everlasting Friends record that he passed off as a House of Pain record. I know a lot of fans love it. I like it. I mean, quality-wise, it's top shelf. It's just not a House of Pain record. So I have, I feel some type of a way. The first one, there's an old saying, you got a lifetime to make your first record and a year to make your second. And so there's a lifetime worth of stuff in the first one. Yeah. And then we had a year later to, especially if you're a success, you really got less than a year to do it again. And so what you hear here on the second one is an extension of the first with some updates and some,
Diamond D production and
right. And so we could pick and choose other elements, but by the time it was the third one, it was all falling apart, and Everlast decided he wanted to do his version of what he, But my opinion is, I don't think I've ever publicly stated this, and this is just my opinion. Who knows? I mean, there's a, my side, his side, and the truth. You know what I mean? But my feeling of the third one was that he went in trying to not do House of Pain, and they're like, nah, we need a House of Pain record. You're signed to 3, so deliver. So he's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna put me, Divine Styler, Cockney O'Dyer, we're gonna make a record, and we'll throw these dudes in the photo shoot. But really, a very little hand, and there's very little Danny Boy imprint on that. I worked on the artwork. I even subcontracted it out to somebody else who missed it by a mile on what I was trying to do. The title of that record was Everlast's title. I titled the first 2, designed the first 2. My flavor was in there. I never dispelled the myth that I was a lyricist, but as I get older and I look back, I was never a lyricist. I'm a creative director. I'm a rah-rah dude. I'm a punch you in your fucking face type of dude if you get out of line.
Hell yeah.
And at a time in hip hop, there was, being white boys, you had to have that kind of thing going on. I mean, the Beasties didn't need it because they came in an era where, they had the right tooling, if you will, with Def
They were next to
Jam
Russell
and
and them.
being
It was
partnered with
different.
Russell, and they came out of the punk thing. Well, I came out of the punk thing too, but in a different way. I came out of the punk from a street gang point of view, and just like Suicidal Tendencies had their own gang, and every time they do a show, their gang showed up. All those Suey dudes show up. We had a gang too, and we became, House of Pain became our band. We did it opposite. We didn't have a band, then started a gang. We had a gang and then started a band.
Wow.
And Eric was, the driving force as far as a writer and lyricist, without a doubt. And Mug's production is unmatched, especially in that era when, people are just getting a look at that new sound. But make no mistake, I mean, that's my gang, that's my brand, that's my, that's, you're looking at that. And in the time of hip hop, some people try to, erase that part, and that's not aimed at anybody, but there's a lot of people, it's easy to
because
say,
he rhymes.
This is what got us here. This was what. Once you get there, you're like, yeah, I did all this. Nah, you didn't do all that, bro. And anybody who says that goes for anybody. I don't, So people, again, I would have never been in hip hop if it wasn't for Everlast. So I don't want to. I'm not putting out subliminals out there. I'm just telling you because you said the key thing. We're fans. If we weren't fans, we're just talking pedestrian. About jumping around. We don't go into anything past that. Yeah. But as fans, I want fans to know, because I feel like I still do my best to cater to the fans. I still make a little bit of stuff here and there. I'm still Irish. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
I'm still proud of that, and I still keep in touch with a large swath of the fan base that was left wondering, like, what happened to y'all? And you know what I mean? We grew apart, and by the third album, it was like it wasn't recognizable to me, and it wasn't my, it wasn't even that, like, I just didn't. It wasn't my style of hip hop. You know what I mean?
But you can tell by the stuff you're doing now is like you can tell you were the creative genius behind all that, man. To be honest, like with even the stuff you're doing now and like the Delta Bravo stuff and like all that. I can tell. I can tell that.
Coka.
This is going back to a point where prior to. The 90s, like I'm guessing if you got a record deal, you left that all up to the label, and the label did all that, and they had a real nice budget to do that, and they hired the best artists in town, and they hired the best PR in town, and not that wasn't going on at Tommy Boy in '92, but then you find a band who goes, nah, we know what we want to do, and we know what we want to look like, and here it is, and that the label goes, you're right, we agree, it's authentic. Do you? So I had license to do whatever I wanted to do, and a budget to do what I wanted to do. And now we got quite the opposite. So originally there was massive budgets, and they hired the best people to do, and the artists just had to worry about being musical artists, right? And then our era, it was like a little bit of both, but now these artists, they got to be 360, and if they can rhyme their ass off, but they don't get the rest of it, who cares? Right. Yeah. Who cares? Because totally I don't buy rhymes. I got to be honest with you. I buy lifestyle. I buy into a lifestyle. Like if you're an MC and you spit, and I know, I don't even want to throw names, and they're names that I'm not even, but I could think of a handful of names of dudes that fire, and they're no longer even in the conversation.
Cannabis was crazy. No lifestyle, no personality.
Joel Ortiz or what's his name? Exhibit A and B, J Electronica.
J Electronica.
Like it's like, there's no, if it's just an MC and there's nothing else to buy into, we quit.
You guys were very lifestyle
becomes disposable. Driven. You had to be, and that was what it was for me. It was a lifestyle. Hip hop was the life I was living, but we had.
You know how many times I tried to steal a postman's hat? Like, you know how many times I tried to steal?
I still got it. I still got the original one. But
that's crazy.
Yeah, I found that hat, and it very rarely rains in LA, and it rained terribly. We get a couple of years we get a thing called El Nino, and it blows through, and it's like torrential rains. And one day I was walking. I lived off of Melrose, and I was walking, and here comes that hat floating in the gutter.
Oh wow.
Keep getting incoming calls, and the hat comes flying down in the rain, coming down the gutter, and I pick it up, and it's that mailman hat, and this is the God's honest truth. Wow. I was like, yo, that's crazy, and I think it blew off the rack at one of the stores on Melrose because it was like a little bohemian St. Mark's vibe down there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. Like outdoor rack, so it flew off the rack. Someone had like a used hats, on the rack. So I kind of kept it. I wasn't sure what to do with it. It was kind of fly. It was kind of like, it's kind of weird. This is like 1990, 1991, right?
Yeah.
Bro, my mouth to God's ears. I'm at a fucking event at a place called the El Rey Theater, and it's the release party for oh man, it's a horror movie, and Lemmy and Motorhead did the soundtrack. Anyway, I run into MCA, and I don't know MCA from a hole in the wall. I'm just a massive Beastie Boy fan and a B-boy.
Right.
And I'm coming through the crowd, and I got the hat on, but I'm still a little apprehensive about the hat. Nobody really said nothing about it. And here comes MCA. With the hat. Yeah. Yo, for real. And you know, here comes MCA coming through the crowd. And I notice him because I'm a fan, and they're working on probably just rap Paul's Boutique, and he looks, he double takes, and he goes, "Yo, nice hat." And from then on, I shit you not, it was my favorite. I wore it every day because he, in my mind, it was like why I rock those weird type of, you know, I seen them rocking the trucker hats. Yeah, they were rocking all the. They were probably on tour and hitting every truck stop, catching all of those, you know, Remington and Penn reels and the chewing tobacco hats and all that. That was, you know, that was like deep cuts. And so that hat I still have. It's ironic that people still, you know, remember that shit. That's great. And people used to come to shows all the time with jackets, hats, shirts, whatever. And so,
I'd walk by the mail trucks. I'd see them and I'd be like, yo, I'd look in to see if there was one.
Grab one, snatch
I'm going to get one. Like, yo.
Nah, you and Everlast went to high school together. You've known him for a very long time.
Yeah, we know each other for a long time. We didn't really go to high school together in conventional way. Like I barely went into high school. The high school I was supposed to go to was Taft High School, and Everlast went to summer school there, I believe. And then I got in trouble, and they threw me out of that high school. And because I had recently moved, I was no longer in that district. I was in Canoga Park High School's district, and Eric went there. So we went there, but I don't, you know, I used to see Eric. We used to work at this place called the Pace Membership Warehouse, which was like the early version of Costco. And they used to pay back then like $6.50 if you just to push carts, and that was like triple or double the minimum wage. Minimum wage was like $3.25. They're paying like $6.50. So Eric worked there. I worked there. A lot of the kids in that area worked there. And I remember him, man. One day I'm out there, it's like a hot ass day in summer, and I got like 100 carts, and we're trying to push them in, me and some other dude. And Eric's walking out with his mother, and he's got a carton of cigarettes and like a bag full of something else, and he's waving at us like, "Fuck you, can I curse here? Sorry, bro." He's got that look like the cat that ate the canary. He's like, "Fuck you, motherfuckers. Have a good summer. I'm going back east." And he went back to New York that summer with it, I think with his aunt or whatever. And I remember running into him like a couple months later in the mall. He had a fur Paperboy Kangol, and he had like a big letter E, you know, a gold chain with a letter E. He came back with a little East Coast shit. And usually that was my experience too. So I was born in Brooklyn, raised in Los Angeles, and every summer my mother would send me back to either New York or New Jersey, mostly New Jersey. But I was picking up on all the East Coast stuff. I always felt like I was disconnected, an East Coast kid at heart, living in LA. So I was always had a deep a love for all things East Coast, sports, music, vibe, the whole style. And so I had a very, very unique upbringing in that way. I like to say a poor man's Glenn E. Friedman. And I don't know if you know who Glenn E. Friedman, the photographer, is. If you Google, your mind's going to like, he super explode. He started taking photos around the age of 14 for Skateboarder magazine. And he got all the early Dogtown stuff. He's got all the early punk stuff. So all the Minor Threat album covers and everything at Def Jam. So all your favorite records are shot by him. LL Cool J's Public Enemy's record. Google Glenn E. Friedman. He executive produced at like 20. He lent Suicidal Tendencies, lent Mike Muir, I think $20,000 to do the first Suicidal Tendencies record. So this guy lived 10 lives in one. If I had a poor man's experience of that, it's overstating it, but I did go back and forth. And this is at a time where like in LA, we were rocking Oingo Boingo. In New York, they were like, who? They didn't know who that was. And I would come back with Curtis Blow and Jungle Brothers and
early 80s,
Ultramagnetic. 80s and 90s. You know, it was I was going back since the 70s. But I wasn't going back in the 90s. The records brought me back. But yes, early to mid 80s, it was two different worlds, man. There was no internet. There's no cell phones.
You guys were an East Coast group, and because
by design, us in Cyprus by design, but by design, and because Eric wore the Celtics jersey, it threw everybody off to think we were from Boston as well. Which was just like it was just that white boy style, man. In my mind, it's a Spike Lee thing. You know, the guy who has the 10 speed, he steps on dudes' Nikes.
With the
he's got and so it's like one of those, like it's like it's like fuck it, we'll roll. And so
that's dope, bro.
Yeah, man, growing up was very, very unique in that way. And I look back some of the, it was my IQ for all things pop culture went through the roof at that point, it was just a different world. And we are very fortunate to be the last generation of the kids who grew up without the internet and without cell phone technology. And then the first generation to incorporate it into our lives and be proficient at it and to enjoy the benefits of it. Thank God there was no Twitter when I was in my teens or in my early 20s, because I'd be banned for life from everything.
They have a term for it, Danny. They have a term. It's called exennial, a person that had an analog childhood and a digital adulthood.
There you go. Let's see. I learned something new every day. It's fantastic.
But I cherish
it's true.
it. Bro. I cherish it. Yeah.
Nah, me too. And nobody will ever know what that's like again. It was like it's impossible to put the genie back in the bottle. Right. And so for me, you know, those were magical years, and I was like a wizard, if you will. Anybody who was doing any kind of traveling back then, because things were so regional.
Yeah.
I mean, rest in peace to Mr. Van Doren, who died this week. That's the guy who started Vans. And when I was growing up in Southern California, if you didn't have those, you weren't shit. And then I would go back summer East Coast. People were like, "Yo, what kind of shoes?" They didn't even know what it was. Only older kids knew. Older kids would be like, "Yo, you're from Cali, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." I had no idea how they knew, because they were reading like motocross magazines or surfer magazines,
Transworld skateboarding.
Even before Transworld. I mean, this is going back when like skateboarding had fizzled out. It was like
the beginning, the first wave of it.
But older dudes knew that was a California style. So OP shorts, Lightning Bolt, Town and Country, Vans. Now every kid on the planet wears them, black, white, or pinstripe. It don't matter. Back then, it was strictly white boys.
I saw Nas in Vans about a month ago, and people were going crazy.
And it's like it's a trip. But I remember when that was really like it was like a Valley beach thing. You know, it was like Valley kids wore them, Venice kids wore them. You know, like the beach area skater community wore them. Some BMX, but that was about it. So the world obviously is all plug and play now.
Yeah.
I like to consider myself a hunter-gatherer, and I loved hip hop from the moment I heard it. I grew up on my mother's Motown record collection and her disco records. And when I moved to California, they called me Disco Dan. And I assure you, those were fighting words, because it wasn't a term of endearment. And when you're insecure and people calling you Disco Dan, you're ready to fight at the drop of a hat. But my soul moves to soul music. And so hip hop was an easy transition for me, especially with my love of all things East Coast. And, you know, I love the challenge of going to put it all together. And what I mean by that is, like, you know, today the kids don't know what it's like to you know, to have to really fight for these things. I mean, they might have to go on StockX or, you know, create a bot that steals all the sneakers off of the Nike site to drop.
It ain't being outside, Dan. It ain't being outside.
And so it's so terrible, man. I don't even partake anymore. I mean, I do and I don't, but you know, it was the scavenger hunt, man. You'd find another dude, you know, let's say in Everlast, and we would go, let's go to the swap meet and get our hats made. And to do that, it was like an episode it was like the movie The Warriors. Like
you had to go. Your life.
You're risking your life or your teeth or above 50 or your wallet or sneakers. You can get got.
Yes.
And so as tough as I like to think I am, man, nobody's that tough. I watched a lot of people get knocked out their shit over there. Fights and that thing used to happen all the time. So, but we were brave enough and willing enough to go to any length to pursue our love of hip hop. And so that meant
and you guys are another thing we talk about. Me and Leeds talk about this a lot. You guys are big guys. You're a big guy. Everlast's a big guy.
I'm 6'6" and 265 pounds. So
dude, you're huge.
Heavyweight.
That helps a little bit when you're moving around.
No, of course. But I used to be a thin little, like, you know,
with that
stick. Yeah, no, listen, you've heard. No, so. But that being said, like, you know, I always tell big dudes or anybody, I'm like, yo, anybody can get it, man. I've watched a lot of dudes. I watched dudes that I thought were like untouchable get knocked out the box just by get caught slipping or a sucker punch or even just missing. You know, we see it all the time in UFC. You see it all the time. And so anyway, all of that aside, my love of the culture comes out of all of that. You know, I understand you need 5 things to make a culture. You need a dance form. I was infatuated since day one of popping and breakdancing. It was new to the world. Couldn't believe that like what I was witnessing. I love graffiti, which is the art form. I love the language. It was different. It kept me like rooted in New York, like mystique in LA. I love of the instrument, which to me was the turntable, because nobody had ever used it to actually make sound and sort of just, you know, be juggling and scratching, and it was all, and this is what gets the least amount of respect, I'm sure, but it's still the most prevalent is the fashion. And it was like, you could look across the room and you see me in my fat laces, my name belt buckle, and my Kangol, and you're like, they knew, because you couldn't find it. There was nowhere you could find name belt buckles in LA that I knew of at the time. I went back east, and we went all over that summer, finally finding one in Jersey City at like a thing called the Family Bargain Center, and I got my Danny Boy name. Oh my God! And literally, my aunt and uncle were and my cousin was so tired of me going on about like a retarded kid. I wasn't gonna go home without the stupid belt buckle, and I still have the belt buckle, bro. I even
that's
traded
a good point, though. The hunt of doing all that stuff. I love that.
Of course, and that's what the challenge was. And then the whole shit was to put it all together and then take it out on a Friday night and see if someone would salute it. And then that was how you would find your other tribe members. You were like, yo, I see you. Okay. Exactly. That's how I met DJ Epic, from who did he did Search's solo records. Wolf and Epic did all the BBD, Velvet DeVoe stuff. He did Crazy Town, was a group he produced and was in. I don't know if you guys know him. Great producer, great dude. He was an early B-boy, Everlast early B-boy. I even got old sketches he probably doesn't even know. When he used to write Czar, CZAR, and he had hand styles and bubbles and graffiti. His characters were nice and nicer than you would have. Then even I'm like, yo, he's better than me at that shit. And I like to get down and do my thing. And so all of it I liked, man. And then that to me, I missed punk by about 5 years because I'm 52. So by the time punk was like fully blown and all that, it wasn't going to be authentic for me to try to do that. People were, but for me, the new frontier was hip hop, and being a white guy,
was the new punk. Yeah, it really.
And exactly where I'm going. It's like it was revolutionary. Now my mother was a tough nut to crack because she grew up, a Brooklynite who spent most of her time at the Peppermint Lounge. All she knew was soul music. So I couldn't really rock her boat with that. But any other white kids that I hang out with in suburbia, if their parents heard Public Enemy or they heard Rock the Bell, they're like, turn that shit off, get that shit out of here. And it was a badge of honor. It was like, good. Yeah. I hope you hate it. I'm gonna fucking play it as loud as I could and be so.
There's because nothing more punk than you guys doing hip hop. Like that is
at that point, at that point it was. Now people go, well, what do you do for a living? What do you do? I tell them, they don't even blink. It's like because it's so common that everybody, can do that. And so this is like, again, I never had aspirations to be an MC. I always wished I had that kind of skill that the people that I admire have. It never came natural to me. I could rhyme okay at a time when very few white people could, but this is Eric's world, and this is where his genius and his skill is apparent. And so it was at the time it was a great symbiotic relationship where the yin and yang were locked in. I would handle all of the exterior and he would handle all of the interior, and hence the car moved forward. And so it's hard to find those things once they're disconnected. It's not as easy for what I do as a creative director to just plug and play again, because if it ain't authentic and it's a full-time job. Of course, we grew up, we grew apart. Growing apart as well is equal as growing up. Like we grew up at different levels, and I'm not listen. I'm sure I wasn't the easiest person to hang around back then either. Low self-esteem and egomania combined makes for a lot of. A lot of stuff.
Crazy.
And so I had to go through a lot of ups and a lot of downs to come back out on this side of things. And you know what? I love everybody that I've come into contact with, despite if there's anger, pain, or hurt still there. And again, that's everybody. But as far as House of Pain goes, I'll always have fond memories. I'm not here without that. It's a part of my story. For years I abandoned it and didn't want nothing to do with it. Only for it was too painful, and it was too like what could have been. And now I feel like it's my story. Like, why would I not? Like I was never embarrassed or uncomfortable. It just was too painful. But now I'm like, and I don't care what anybody thinks of that.
Do you think that comes from your sobriety at all, or do you think?
I mean, it comes from growing up and looking at things with a new lens and going, bro, this is who you are. People still love you for that. And I'm in constant contact because people always, they want to talk about it almost 30 years later. So why shouldn't I oblige? And again, I started this band in my room, in my head, You know, and Eric was the reason why it becomes a real band. But make no mistake, like I founded this shit. This is not, he didn't dream it up in his bedroom. I did.
Now, he was doing a little bit of stuff with Ice-T, and it was like,
he did do,
it was all right. Like, it wasn't.
Well, listen, I'm going to tell you, all things being equal, at 17 years old or so, he had a record deal with Ice-T. Just that fact alone is like
fucking dope.
Crazy.
Incredible.
In that
era, I mean, are you kidding me? And I liked his first record. I felt that there wasn't enough. I don't know. I just felt like I liked the record. I was a fan. Cool. And, you know, one time he said, we were on stage, he's like, yeah, I want to thank Danny. He's my first fan. And I felt some type of a way because I felt like, is he trying to like
son you?
Yeah. Like, is it
what?
And then I was like, you know what?
Nice, though. It's thoughtful.
But he's not lying, and I don't and giving him the benefit of the doubt. It wasn't meant that way.
He says on the second album, he says something on the second album. He says something along the lines of like, "Thank you for Danny Boy. Ever since you've been in my life, you've made it better." Type of a deal.
Make a joy or some shit. Yeah. No, listen, I did my best. So what I'm saying is I probably was the first fan. I liked this shit, and syndication was a jump off. Ironically, I wasn't a fan of Third Base at all. Did not like their whole vibe. Felt that it wasn't like, you know, and I just did a podcast with Serch, and me and Serch are friends. Yeah. And I told Serch, listen, you know, like his solo record I liked. Like Here It Comes was my joint. Even that beat, the way he first comes in, I'm like, I love. But I was looking at it like these are not how I would represent if I was doing a group. They were on before us, and they were a name brand and their legacy act, no doubt about it. Yep. And I have nothing but 100% respect and admiration for Third Base as a group, for Serch as a human, for Pete Nice, for all of them. But I was such a Beastie fan that any injustice that they suffered at the hand, or they were Third Base was trying to throw rocks, you know, at the request of Russell, and I'm like, fuck that shit, you know what I mean? And that is not that I ain't down with that shit. But why I bring all that back is to say that, you know, we're a handful we're a small sample size of a hip hop that are white acts that actually succeeded. You can count on one hand. You could throw a few oddballs in there, and I don't mean oddballs like as the people, but if Vanilla Ice is in that conversation or Marky Mark, perhaps. But I'm saying House of Pain. I'm saying Beastie Boys, Third Base, House of Pain, Eminem. And if I'm forgetting a few, so be it.
Maybe later on, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's it. You know, absolutely. But I feel like there was a certain.
But they didn't touch the mainstream like you guys did.
No. And listen, I'm a huge fan of nonfiction as well. But you're right. I feel like I'm talking in like the golden era. Like after that, kind of all the rules were gone. Like people were putting out their own records. People were doing independent deals left and right. That was the game. It wasn't on a major level. It wasn't getting radio play out the wazoo.
But they weren't like, you know,
People Magazine and no, I know, that's what I mean. So, and I'm just saying, no, there's 1,000 MCs that are white that could spit, and that's not even where I'm going. I'm just saying, like, when even now, you know, I remember going out on the first La Coka Nostra tour, and the tour bus pulled into like a CVS, and the kid behind the counter is like, "Oh, who are you guys?" I was like, "House of Pain." He's like, he must have been like 19, 18-year-old. You know, I'm like, "Jump Around." You know, I was like, "Man, we're getting old," and that was in like 2009.
Right.
So there was a long enough where kids wasn't there. They weren't brought up, and I forgot the magic trick was like not going to work anymore. Now it stays relevant because of sporting events only.
Every game, bro.
Every game. Or DJs always play it at the end of the night to get a wild reaction. But what I'm saying is the new kids or people who are not hip hop fans whatsoever, they recognize it because of sports. So when people come here, they're like, "Excuse me, they tell me what group are you in again?" I'm like, "Look, you ever been to a sporting event? Perhaps you've heard a song called Jump Around." But they could care. They don't know anything about
catalog,
hip hop or any. Well, and it's
the Legend EP.
They don't. They just don't know about hip hop. So
you're right.
For what it's worth, that's why it's still relevant, because the amount of spins it gets at sporting events and what that does to, you know, people who are drunk at a stadium. So
here's a funny one, right? So you the kid at the gas station didn't know who House of Pain was. My wife didn't know who Punky Brewster was. She's 10 years younger than me, and she didn't know. When I'm watching this documentary that you're in, this Kid 90 thing recently, I thought it was really cool. I thought she did a really good job, like kind of putting it together. It seemed like it was really therapeutic for her. The clips of you guys dating during like the beginning of the House of Pain stuff was really cool. Can you talk about that experience at all? Or
yeah, of course.
Documentary?
Yeah. So I meet Soleil Moon Frye for the record, and I don't say this for any other reason than just for clarification. I have never seen an episode of Punky Brewster in my life. I was too old for that.
Right.
By the time that, like in the 80s, I was already out at nightclubs at 16. Out all night. My mother didn't care. I was a latchkey kid. She's like, "Here's the key.
Show. It was a
Don't fucking wake me up. Like, do your thing." So I never seen the show, no interest in it. But I did obviously understand that she was a child star in the 80s. Really that I knew. I'd heard her name. Yeah. But I had no interest in that. And I meet her through a mutual friend, and we just hit it off. And at the time, she had like a crush. I mean, she's too young. And I was dating like, just strippers and hookers and
wilding, yeah.
Yeah, wilding. And she was like just like a sweet, little girl. Yeah. And so, but I explained this last night to somebody, and she was can you imagine your whole life? All you hear is you're going to be dead or in prison just like your father, and you have low expectations for your life, and all you know how to do is sell a little bit of drugs and do petty crimes and theft, right? That's me I'm talking about. Yeah. And then at 21, we make a record, and everybody, including people who used to despise you, are now treating you like the coolest thing since sliced bread. Right. And everybody's telling you how great you are, how big this is going to be. Started getting panic attacks. It's
overwhelming.
It's an overwhelming, bizarro world. Twilight Zone episode. There was one Twilight Zone. I should know the name. I've talked about this so many times. But where this gangster gets shot, and he goes to what he thinks is heaven, and he starts gambling, and he wins every time, and every broad wants him, and everything he does is a win, and he's loving it. And then he's not. It's so predictable that he stops loving it. Right. And then at the end, he tells the guy who's his keeper. He goes, listen, this is getting a little bit much. I'd like to lose once in a while. It'd be nice to have a broad say no. I can't imagine why heaven would be so unsatisfying and perfect. And the guy goes, "What makes you think you're in heaven?"
Right.
He went to hell, bro.
Right. That's crazy.
He went to hell. And I was like, yo, is this like some weird purgatory? Like, I didn't trust anybody. Even my own mother and family were like, they just treat you different. And here comes little Punky Brewster, and she's been through everything I'm talking about going through and just about to go on a ride. So she was like a touchstone and a safety net and a voice of reason. I could trust her. Mm-hmm. She had nothing to gain from me. Right. She still, Punky Brewster is like, it's a superstar child. Yeah. And so there was this weird connection where I was like out there pretending like I had it all figured out and I got this, but I would always kind of she was like the guiding light through those years for me. It wasn't until a few years later that we ended up connecting and getting together, romantically. But unfortunately, I was already at this point now somewhat down the path to being a drug addict. I was, an alcoholic at that point, and starting to do drugs heavily at this point. And so the best thing I could ever have done was to shun those people before they shunned me. And I also understood that we take those kind of people down because they love us and they're willing to go to any length to help you. And those are the people that get hurt the most and the first. And for whatever reason, it was like time for me to part company. And I remember meeting her for a date, which wasn't a date in that conventional. So we hadn't seen her in a while. And I was with a friend of mine, an actor, and she called and said, "Hey, I got a boyfriend now, and I'm going to go to a movie if you guys will be around." And I don't remember why we agreed to do it, but we did. And the boyfriend looked at us like, looked at her like, give her that look like what people's parents would give you if you're like hanging out with like,
what are you doing?
The bad, yeah. And I didn't see her again for 20 years, and she got married to that guy soon after, and it was like for the best, you know. Yeah. And then about 3 years ago, when I'm starting to come back and forth to Tulsa, Oklahoma, she follows me on Instagram out of the blue. I hadn't talked to her in 20 years. And then she sends me a message. She's like, "Hey, you." And I was like, "Uh-oh.
Here we go."
And then slowly she was like, "Hey, I found all my diaries from back in the day. Would you believe it?" I was like, "Uh-oh." She's like, "Can I have all of this film?" And
you remember her filming, and she was filming a lot. Yeah.
she filmed all the time. Somebody gave her one of those cameras, like Sanyo or something. It was for the younger listeners out there. Back in the day, the camera was like something in your hand. You had to look through a little hole, and it was like it wasn't. They made a camera that was like 10 times or 20 times the thickness of an iPad, but similar in fashion. She could point it and look in a screen and see what she was filming. Oh, wow. And at first, it was it was a little weird bringing that around, but you get used to anything. And after a while, it was just kind of. And she was like, "I'm going to make a documentary about House of Pain. I'm going to make a documentary about House of Pain." And her brother are both. Her brother's a really great photographer and actor, and but his photography is incredible. I wish he would do. He's got a lot of archives. And they just recorded stuff for like a year or so. And so what you saw in that is that I don't want to spoil the documentary. At first, I wasn't sure why she would want to go down that road. I've burnt most of the photos from my past, or destroyed a lot of those old because I didn't want to look back.
See yourself.
Yeah. But what I thought, what I thought she was going to do and what she did do was completely different. And my hat's off to her is what I'm saying. It's really brave to go dig through your stuff like that, especially when there's been a lot of like, it's not a
lot of kids died. A lot of people died.
Well, you'll do the spoiling then, fine. I'm just saying. I know. I'm just saying for anybody who hasn't, I'm just glad I'm not at the end credits where the faces start to show up.
That's the scene when she comes back to see you in Tulsa.
She does, yeah.
That was kind of. It seemed like it was kind of surreal. I see you like looking to the side and stuff. It was like your girlfriend coming back. It was kind of odd.
Yeah, and my wife at the time was in here, and we're talking about old things. And you know what? Here's the deal. For me, it was God's hand in my life, allowing me to make the amends that I needed to make. I probably should have made it a long time sooner. There
you go.
When you work a 12-step program, as I do, there's doing an amends is conditional, and it's on the condition that we don't harm ourselves or others. So it's not for me. If I owe you, if I went and robbed a bank 10 years ago and got away with it, right? And now I'm married and I got kids and whatever, I'm not allowed to go back in the bank and turn myself in, because now my wife has to fend for herself. My kids have no father. So this is not a way we would make an amends. We would make a living amends, never to rob a bank again. And if we had the means or the willingness, which we should, then if we took 10,000, even if it's $1 at a time, to some other charity or some other way, you can give back there. You're right, pay it back. That's in that case. But there are times where it's completely appropriate and very much we're not supposed to wait on those. But I wasn't sure, because she was married and that I should be, making those amends. So when the time came, even though it took 20 years, when she came here, I was able to make the amends for just being, a drug addict who cared about her, but was also super when drug addicts, there's nobody more selfish and self-seeking than the drug addict, because we need that to survive in that moment, the drugs and the alcohol, and everything comes second to that, And so she definitely took a rough ride for the last whatever, amount of time she spent with me while she was trying to help me out of that, but there was no helping me. I had to hit rock bottom. And so everything worked out the way it should. I don't put anybody higher in the world as far as people that I admire, adore, and love than Soleil Moon Frye. She's in that like top tier of that's up there with like my grandmother. You know what I mean? Like
one of your favorite people.
My one. Absolute. My Nana was my one. From day one.
She seems like a really genuine person, man.
You're not going to meet a better one. And I know that people throw that around easily. This one she's one of one. And so I feel the blessing was really that, that I was able to, spend the good times with her. There was some bad times, of course. And now everything has been, both sides of the street is clean. My side is clean, and able to make that amends. And we have a really good friendship now. And I'm very proud of her, and admire her greatly, as I always have. So
that's really cool, man. And speaking of like the sobriety and stuff, how many years at this point are you sober?
I just celebrated 16 years on April 15th. So definitely God has a sense of humor, put it on tax day. But yeah, man, it's been the best thing that could ever happen to me. And awesome, all I have to do is remain willing. And that's what I do. One day at a time, I remain willing, and I do what's necessary to stay sober. And, being an Irishman who loves to drink, I mean, I thought, well, how can I do life without drinking? I mean, it's not only can I drink, then I feel like my Irishness is compromised and all of that bullshit. It's so wrong. It's so wrong. It's such a bad little, lie to tell yourself, man. My older brother's got 22 years sobriety. I got 16. Good friends of mine. Slane got some, 7 years sobriety. Like someone
Leeds 10 years.
Yeah. Wow. So it's like, we do recover, and that's the important part, man. I didn't think there was going to be hope for me because of all of this stuff, and the causes and conditions. But it's, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I can assure you that. There's no secret to it except for willingness. When you're willing, when you're ready to, if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, find the willingness and reach out. And that includes me. If people are serious and I can point them in the right direction. So.
Yeah, very cool, man. Speaking of,
I can show him what I did.
Speaking of George, right? Like, can you describe when you first met him? Me and Leeds were kind of not managing, but like corralling him at the time in Boston, and we have a lot of crazy stories when he was first. But I was there when he was kind of getting ushered off to you guys, and I remember there was a story.
What year was that?
2004, five.
Yeah, so this is before that. So I met him through EZAC.
This is Knockout Kings.
Yeah, this is way before that. So I met him on a phone call when I was on a relapse. So I got originally sober in 2000, but 2003, before, and I got, so by 2003 I was out again, and that's when I met Slane over a phone call. He had some drug dealer in Boston that was like financing his demos, and they want to fly me out, and
Boston
I ended up bringing
Sewer
this kid.
Records. I remember.
You got a better memory than me, my friend, and. Me and Big Left came out. I just met Big Left, and we all clicked, and I was so high I couldn't rhyme. I was just like, I'm going back to the hotel, and him and Big Left just knocked out a few tracks, and then we brought him back to LA. I tried to get him a deal with Lethal, because Lethal had a deal at Geffen Records, and he had a kid he was working with,
Optimo.
And we started to think, why make 3 records when we can make 1 record? And so that was like the early version of La Coka. They were trying to call themselves the Knockouts, Gasoline Alley. They had atrocious names.
Gasoline Alley. I remember that.
I was like, what in the, and then
Slane
one day.
was crazy, bro. Slane was,
I know.
He was the best. Like at that era,
so for sure.
We thought he could go as high as he could go. Yeah.
Of course. And so I had a 2-way pager, and Big Left hit me up, and I had disappeared for like 2 weeks from the studio. It was just getting to be like, it was like, they were all drinking and using, and then they were all like pulling each other to the side, and it was like an episode of like Real Housewives, and I was like, no, I just can't go over there no more. And one day Big Left said, yo, man, we miss you, man, you need to come back, it's all good, like one big family, like La Cosa Nostra. I said, you guys keep getting fucking high over there, they're gonna call you La Coca Nostra. I go, I'm not. Meanwhile, I'm doing methamphetamines out the fucking around the clock, but I was trying to, I thought nobody understood that, I was doing it very discreet, very posh about my, but they were just openly like, kid, it's like
wild
boxing. And so so every time I would call over there, I'd be like, how's La Coca Nostra doing? They'd be like, come on, man, come on. They hated it. There was like a stigma. And then I was like, nah, this is La Coca Nostra. And we started just running with it. And so, La Cosa Nostra, as you know, is this thing of ours. And I thought, why isn't music? This is out the drug of ours, this drug of ours. And this is the drug, music. And so everybody started to like slow down on all of the extracurricular stuff, and we started getting serious about it. And that's when I realized, like, this is dope, but I need someone who could really lead these dudes. And that's when, again, I'm a fan of nonfiction too. Through EZAC, he put me onto that too. I ran into Bill through Lords of Brooklyn, and then I was like, yo, would you get on a track? And he submitted he sent in Tony Montana, fuck Tony Montana. I was like, that is fucking aggressive and ballsy to say. And I love it. And he joined the group immediately after. And then I got literally a cold call or a cold message out of it for a 10-year not talking to Everlast out of the blue on MySpace, like, yo, I see what you're doing, I want to get down with it. I was like, what? I was like, what? The prodigal son has returned. And I was like, yeah, we'd love you to do a track. And as I'm talking, I'm texting Bill immediately. He's like, yeah. He's like, nah, I want to join the group. I was like, oh shit.
Wow.
And that's that fork in the road. Unfortunately, it didn't work out long term. But that was, we rolled the dice on it, man. Everybody, listen, we love Everlast. He was a major part of why that was a successful endeavor, because there's no doubt when he steps into a project, he brings a fan base that is like, he brings it all and he gives 100%. The problem is that he's easily bored and frustrated and doesn't want to be a team player. So he was soon after where, you know, he was disenchanted with it. And
I remember hearing stories about like, you know, it was tough because it was like a start off group. And when you create a new brand, you're kind of taking start off money, doing shows and having to split that money up with the guys is difficult.
Yeah. Listen, if you're in a position, right? Like here's for instance, like I have a museum, right? Mm-hmm. There's no money really, you know, like money comes in, but it's not, but I'm paid in other ways. You know what I mean? I'm paid by the smiles on the kids' faces. I'm paid by everywhere I walk around this town. They're thanking me for doing something for a city that I'm foreign to. You know what I mean? That I've adopted the home. So, and I know that I have other ways that I do make money off the merch that I do, other places and other things. You know what I mean? That subsidizes this. If you get in a startup group, you should already know that. It shouldn't be about the money.
It's a long term.
And it was like, yo, and keeping it 100, like nobody was interested in a lot of shit that anybody was putting out at that time. You know, nonfiction was broken up. Everlast, I don't know, when was the last record he put out prior to that? And all of these other dudes were up and coming, like spitting fucking heat. Spitting fire. And it was like we were gonna take all of these parts and make something to talk about again. And they did. Immediately that made other these minds now go, well, how can I do that also with my solo or my this? And they too much product, in my opinion, was getting put out. Everybody started doing mixtapes and solo things and amortizing the steady success of the group and taking it to their solo fan base. And it was like, it was just like that. So whatever. All I'm saying is like, bro, I would never in good faith join a group and it, depending only on like, especially if you shouldn't join a group like that if you can't afford to go out on a group like that and understand that we all have to fucking split these checks, even how small they were. It was for everybody. I couldn't get a real job, a steady job. I worked at a rehab. I quit because I couldn't keep those hours if I had to just be liquid where I could just jump on and like, so I gave up everything I had in security in early sobriety just to make sure that I could be a part of La Coka Nostra, my own group. Another group, like I said, I made that group curated, out of my fucking head, everything. All of the shit, with help from other people. But make no mistake, La Coka's my baby. Like it's like, and I give up everything to be out there. So I don't want to hear about anybody talking about like, yo, bro, I'm worth more. If you're worth so much, then why'd you join a solo? Why'd you join? Go get it. And stop joining groups that you know, because we were trying to build something bigger than the sum total of its parts. So it is what it is. But that shit gets me like, it doesn't make any sense as an adult.
No,
like we're not kids anymore, man.
And that's some of the stuff I heard that broke the group up with some of the childish.
Of course.
You know what I mean? So let's get into this museum though. You're out in Tulsa and you've created, I heard the house that they filmed the Outsiders movie in was going to get torn down.
Yeah, I'm sitting in it right now. So
you saved it. Like
I'm gonna tell you what. So as a 13-year-old kid, I go see The Outsiders, a Francis Ford Coppola movie. It stars Matt Dillon, Patrick Swayze, Tom Cruise, C. Thomas Howell, Ralph Macchio, Diane Lane,
stars,
et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, it was the Brat Pack. So Rob Lowe, all of it. So I come into this movie not knowing what I'm going to see. I come out like, oh my God, there's everything I'm feeling inside on a movie screen, except for it's set in the 60s. But it's like I come from a broken home. My father was sent to prison when I was 2 months old. He ended up being murdered when I was 17. He was homeless during that, bad alcoholic. And so what I see in this movie is a family that's been broken because of an accident involving a train. That was the catalyst for the family being broken down the way it was, and then the older brother doing what he could do best to take care of his brothers, as they're now all orphans, and the rest of the kids the wayward kids in the neighborhood all gravitated to this house and all hung out and had each other's best interest. I found that in hip hop early on. That's why I was drawn to it. I love that the fact that like if you're a rock dude, God bless, but you probably spend 9 hours in the bedroom working on your pentatonic scales, like that's like some real isolating shit. Right. I'm out in the streets breakdancing with the crew. I'm out there writing graffiti with the crew. I'm in a street gang. I'm in a gang. We create the family out in the world that we didn't find inside. or that was, that was sufficient.
And the thing that I loved about it was the camaraderie and the
brotherhood.
You talk about
the
elements, the expression and the camaraderie was what brought me to it.
And that's for me, that was the lure to hip hop, where I was a rock fan like any other kid growing up in the 70s. I mean, who wasn't? But I didn't see myself in that world as a lifestyle. When hip hop came, it was like, here's the lifestyle. That's me. It's like aggressive. It's fucking cool. It's soulful. It's empowering. And it's like, it's so many things. So, but make no mistake. I mean, this is why the story is timeless, because there's always this. There's always the have and the have-nots. There's always these kids that are just disconnected. And what we do to make it through, at our core, hopefully we find just a few people who have our best interests as we have theirs, and then it's beautiful and it's manageable if we look out for each other. And it's something as silly as a sunset could be the reason why, you know what I mean? We connect. We saw the same sunset. Doesn't matter if you're in Boston or I'm in Tulsa or you're in Minnesota. And I'm here. We still can agree. We saw the same sunset, and it probably looks a lot different where you're at than I am, but we saw it's the same one, and we can agree it's beautiful. And so for me, this thing has always been impactful. It wasn't until 2009 that I ended up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, on our first La Coka Nostra tour, that I realized that we're in Tulsa, and it clicked in my head that, oh my God, I think the book and the movie was filmed and written in Tulsa. So I went looking for locations. I was able to find the drive-in from the movie. I found the park from the movie where Johnny stabs the Soch, defending Pony Boy from being drowned. And by finding the park, I find the house. At the time, the house had just been bought, and they were doing like a fluff and buff, turning it into a rental property. It was in a really bad side of town and a nasty neighborhood, and they wanted $42,000. And it's been a long time since I considered myself, a wealthy man in that way, but $42,000 was doable, especially. Hell yeah. I mean, in LA, you couldn't buy a house, for anything. You couldn't buy a house in LA for $42,000 probably since the 40s. And you know what I mean? I couldn't believe not only could I buy a house, I could buy the house from the outsiders. Wow. That being said, I had to walk away from it because I'd never been to Oklahoma before in my life. And I was just sober enough to go, Danny, now you're starting shit. Now you're going to get in trouble. Like, don't be a fool. You don't have you're not allowed to buy the world's coolest fort, a greaser fort, for two of your imaginary homeboys and you.
Hold on,
to hang out. Hold on. Exactly. And so I walked away. But for what ends up happening is like I'm sober, I'm highly caffeinated, and I bought a new camera on that tour. And this is the first time that the world is like, the technology we're talking about starts to catch up with us, where all of these things can kind of come into play in a way they never did before. And what I mean is, as I'm on a tour bus, and that tour bus for the first time has Wi-Fi, and I have a laptop with me, and I have a smartphone, and in that way, I was able to connect to the world's largest library known to humanity ever, Google, and I was able to pull up movies and photos and videos real time at the location and go, yes, this is it. Take the before photo, the after photo, mash that together on that bus with software, and then post it on my own channel on Facebook, Twitter, pre-Instagram.
Is that how the Delta Bravo?
That's how it starts. It starts at the Outsiders House Museum. I take a photo of this house before and after, and then we played the Cain's Ballroom, and there was a hole in the wall that Sid Vicious punched from the Sex Pistols in '78 on their only U.S. tour. When they refurbished that place, they cut the hole out and they put it in the office. And by the time I get to sound check, my road manager had been kicking it with the owner, and they were talking about me, and they talked about the Sex Pistols being one of the most historic things that ever happened there. And he said, yeah, Danny's good friends with Steve Jones, the guitarist from the Sex Pistols. So when I got there, he's like, hey, he tells me you're good friends with Jonesy, come show him this. So I took a selfie, bang with the hole, bang with the house, and my phone never stopped vibrating that whole day, man. People were like, what the? They couldn't believe it. They were like, where on the Warner Brothers lot is that house? I'm like, no, dude, it's not in Burbank. It's here in Tulsa. Nobody knew what Tulsa was, where it was. And so on that tour, I started hitting all kinds of stuff. I went to Dallas, and I hit the grassy knoll from JFK. I went to Minneapolis, and I grew up, my mother's favorite show was the Mary Tyler Moore Show. I loved that show.
Mine too, yeah.
And so I went to Nicollet Square, where she throws her hat up and the thing. I went to the house where she rented her apartment would have been up. I went to what's now referred to as the Crack Stack, which is that building that she lived in on further episodes. And I started putting all of those up, and I give up addresses where there had been like one or two little people on Flickr accounts that were location managers, and they would show like old locations and what it looks like today, but they would never give you the address. They didn't want you to know where it was. And I thought that's like a dick move, like spread love, like, yo, especially being like sober. A location.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I'm going to let you know because it brings me such joy. It was the closest thing to having a time machine as a grown ass man, to be able to walk back in my mind's like the history and to be on location and just go, wow, how much has it changed, or how much does this really look the same? It was so incredible. It was like life-changing. So I thought, why not share this joy with everybody else? So we started the Delta Bravo Urban Exploration Team. You can find us on Facebook. It's really just Danny Boy Delta. It's
I
like
follow.
Alpha,
I love
Delta,
it. I love
Bravo,
that.
You know, so just Danny Boy's Urban Exploration Team. I've got everybody from famous photographers to other bands, to other cops, robbers, military. It's a eclectic bunch of pop culture detectives, just like myself, who love just pop culture. And I mean, if you think about it, we grew up on pop culture, man. I mean, Fonzie was the coolest dude I knew in the 70s because of the television shows. And I grew up on you know, we're that era, man, in front of the television with the bowl of cereal and just spending our whole minds, you know, just staring into that shit. So I figured, you know what, while I'm still here, I'd like to see where all of those things were filmed and all of these locations that I heard about in my head. I do a lot of true crime and shit like that too. And it became a real healthy hobby in sobriety for me. And then we continue to do it today. It's as big as it ever was. We got pitched from the top all the way to the bottom to do TV shows. It just never worked out that way. And it's just one of these internet hobbies that we do.
But I've seen members on, like, you know, documentaries and stuff like that.
Yeah, my buddy was just on he's an LAPD detective, and he was just on the Cecil Hotel one about the horror hotel that they have. Yeah, Jim McSorley, Naco Nolan. So he's you know, it's only made everybody's IQ of, like, you know, pop culture go through the roof, because we know now things we never even cared to know, but we know. And I've been to these locations so many times, I can't even tell you, but it's incredible. So
I find myself like, you know, when you talk about being influenced by culture, we started this interview talking to you about how much House of Pain had, you know, influenced me and Tito. Think of us as 12, 13-year-old kids digesting the shit that you guys were making. And I found, like, for myself, you get a certain age and I love new shit. I'm really not a guy that like shuns new music, but my nostalgia and for the stories and the lore that goes into the classic shit, I'm still finding stuff out about Jay-Z and these guys. I'm still finding out stuff about you guys and how it all came together, because we didn't have this shit. We didn't have the access, man. We didn't. We only had the pictures.
And even if you do, you got to have the time as well, and the desire. So you've got half painted pictures, a million of them in your mind, and you try to put a little bit, and then the picture looks more complete. And as you get older, I find that I have to get rid of a lot of the ones that I'm not going to probably, you know, and focus on the ones that are most important. And once they're complete, then I can move on to other ones. And this is kind of what happens with the house. So the house was for sale. It took 5 years for me to really get, like, interested in it. Every year I would come back through Tulsa, either on a tour or road tripping. And I noticed that this house was getting worse and worse. And then within 5 years, the Habitat for Humanities, which was coming through here, tearing down most of this neighborhood, were building newer houses. They were a block away. And I thought, if I come here on year 6, this thing is going to be gone. There's going to be a new Habitat house. And I couldn't let that happen. And so I started to push people's buttons and find out where the owner was. And I was able to make a deal. I ended up buying this house for $15,000. I thought I stole the house. When I got here, I realized it was a fair deal, and she knew better than I did about the condition of it. I panicked because I have no knowledge of any of this stuff on how to remodel. I was confused. Someone said, "Hey man, grab the drywall." And then when I got to the back, I said, "Hey," the guy goes, "Are you looking for the sheetrock?" I said, "No, drywall." They start laughing. I guess it's the same thing. I know now it is. But the point is, it's like, I was like, what the? I'm like, just get someone who understands all this shit. I don't know what I'm doing. But what I was able to do, here's what I was able to do. And I tell kids, and I speak a lot to schools and kids, because this movie didn't just start out as a movie. It was a book. Yeah. And the book was written by a 15-and-a-half-year-old student called S.C. Hinton, Susan Eloise Hinton. Yeah. She writes it at 15 and a half here at Will Rogers High School in Tulsa. She was failing English and got a D+ in creative writing. This book has never been out of print in 52 through 53, 54 years. It sold more, I'm told, on the 50th anniversary than all the years combined. And it's required reading for most 7th and 8th graders in English. So it's it's constantly producing new fans every year of it. We happen to be lucky enough to be at the age where it was a movie that was relevant to us because it came out and it was playing on HBO it still is. So at 5 years, I buy the house. I freak out that I just basically threw my life savings. So at the time I had like 28 grand. There was no, the Coke was fizzled out. House of Pain, we went on a few different runs, and it just was like, it wasn't going anywhere. I could see the writing on the wall, but I was all in on this thing because I couldn't imagine life on earth without it. I just thought this is going to be such a disappointment if they tear this thing down. And for 15 grand, so I was 20 into it. I had to pay 5 to move the tenants who were 8 months behind out.
Wow.
And then here's the magic. And I say this for anybody I used to make excuses for a long time. I don't have a plan. I don't have any money. I don't have any, sometimes you don't need all that. Sometimes you're going to just have to jump in like a fool and put all your money into it and have no plan and fly by the seat of your pants. Is it advisable all the time? Absolutely not. 99% of the time, probably not a good idea. But every once in a while, you have to take a leap of faith and follow your heart. And in this instance, I did, and it could have cost me everything. And it did cost me. There were collateral damage. I'm not going to tell you that my marriage fell apart because of it, but it did not help my marriage. And I am divorced now in ways that were unforeseen at the time. But that being said, it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And what happened to me was I was humble enough to ask for help. And being a 6'6" alpha male, asking for help is not easy when it comes to construction and building. But I had to, and I had to do it. I had to put my bullshit aside, my ego aside, or whatever, and I did it. And be careful what you ask for, because you may get it. And I got it. And it took 3.5 years. And this community came through in ways I'd never even seen community come through. They literally came through in the greaseriest way of all. I get people driving by and say, hey, listen, man, that grass is growing up to your waistline. I do grass for a living, but I can't get at it until after soccer practice on Sunday with my girls. We'll be over here if you don't mind. I said, come on. Sure. And they'd be out there, and the girls would still be in the soccer gear, pushing lawnmowers, cutting our grass down. People were like, hey, that roof is leaking. I'm a roofer. I can come by and we can donate that work. We love what you're doing. And one after the other, it was built this way.
Wow.
Now, Jack White did come through from the White Stripes, and he was in love with it. And he said, I see you haven't reached your goal. How short are you from my financial? I said, we're still $30,000 down from the $75,000 goal that we're looking to do this thing, because it could also cost a lot of money too. And he said, man, I love what you're doing, and you're very clear and concise on your mission statement and what you've told me. And I want to give you $30,000 from last night's show. And I was like, whoa. So he put 30 in. Billy Idol, my lifelong, childhood hero, gave me some clams. And S.E. Hinton gave $35,000 over the 3 years that we were building it. Every year she gave me a check and kept me going. And so it's complete. If I had any doubt about like the state of humanity and thinking that this world is fucked and nobody cares and nobody, in ways that could be true, but there's other ways if you look for it hard enough and you're off. And I found if I'm giving as well, I find other givers, and we all can give each other what we need and build each other up. And so this thing has been the greatest thing that I couldn't imagine ever happened to somebody. If you would have told me in 2009 that they would be doing this from the dining room in the Outsiders House Museum, that it just like, bro, I don't know what you're smoking, but this is not the possibility. I just don't understand. And so I live here full time. I've been here 3 years in Tulsa. Tulsa has like this incredible natural, like spiritual vibe here. I don't know, the Native Americans knew best.
Tulsa's unique.
Tulsa's very unique. And it's the people that really keep me here. I love the Outsiders, and I love Route 66, and I love drive-in theaters, and I love you got 32 or 33 mom and pop burger joints around us, and you don't see those anymore. And there's a lot here. But what I feel here is there's a love and a kindness here that I haven't experienced in any of my travels over the 30 years that I've been going around this planet. And if you're willing to work hard and you got a proper dream and you ask for the help, they will support you with that. So the opportunity here is unlimited as far as I'm concerned.
Awesome.
I've done 3 movies since I've been here. I don't even act. So I mean, I'm telling you, this thing is starting to pop in ways of just things happen, and everybody, all my coastal friends are like, "You still loving it out there?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm still loving it." They're like, "Yo, we're thinking about relocating." And I've already got an ex-NYPD guy, is a New Yorker. He relocated out here. He's like, "I'm tired of New York. I'm tired of the taxes. I'm tired of the politics. I'm tired of the fucking traffic. I'm sick of it all. I'm coming here." And it's a different pace, and it's slower, but it's peaceful, and the vibe is chill. And so, and again, you can have a beautiful life here for a fraction of the cost of
Yeah, man.
Of most places. And so that's what I'm looking to do. I'm looking at my museum now. It's we completely restored the house. It looks just like it did in the movie. I have the world's largest collection. I started this collection with one poster and 20 grand to buy the house. We now have the largest collection of movie and book memorabilia known to man. We've had a bunch of the stars back. Rob Lowe's come back. C. Tom's come back a few different times. He's actually doing, he plays guitar and is a singer-songwriter, and he's going to do a show on our lawn in August. It's 2 sold-out shows. We've had Ralph Macchio here a couple of times. We've had most of the cast and the extras in it, and the author here and the producer. So it's been, and I want to tell you, if I did a panoramic with the video right now, everybody's lawn is proper. All the garbage is gone. The streets have all been redone. So it's had a very nice ripple effect on the surrounding community. It is the pride of North Tulsa now, and everybody looks out for it, and everybody admires what we're doing here. And I think their houses have probably doubled in worth just because of us being here. And so that makes me feel good that it's been a win-win for everybody. But most importantly, as a civic, center and a place of joy for Tulsans, I was able to save that with the help of Tulsans and fans. And so,
what a great story, man! Like that all that stuff that you've been through, and I think me and Tito talk about this stuff. Tito has been with me through my radio journey. I've been around the country doing radio in a bunch of different markets and stuff. And when you really kind of put yourself out there to do something in the world, amazing things come from it. Like, you would think it's a scary thing to really put yourself out there, but it's not. It's actually like it's welcoming and warming, and people come to you. And to see that it started with this House of Pain and it went through this whole ups and downs, sobriety, and to be almost like feels like pseudo retirement out there in Oklahoma. I feel like it's a really cool, like, kind of closure and like a chapter.
Yeah, no, you and me both. Listen, I'm working on a book right now, and for years people were like, you need to write a book, and I got crazy stories. I mean, you're not even getting. I
know.
I was never interested in telling those crazy stories because it doesn't serve anything but besides my ego or my alter ego of like. And there's nothing. I don't like reading books like that, and I don't like books like that. And what I don't like, even worse than books like that, are autobiographies where there's no dirt under the fingernails, and you're looking at somebody's highlight reel where there's just, it's all perfection. So
tell us the truth.
I'm writing I'm working on it now, but it's really for kids that went through what I went through and worse, or maybe less, and finding hope despite those things, because I'm not a fan of people telling me, well, I drink and use because X, Y, and Z. It's like, same reason that's the same reason why you shouldn't drink. You know what I mean? Yankees lost, so I'm drinking, cool. But it's also a good reason not to fucking drink. Like, they lost already. You got to double it down, If I'm an alcoholic and I got a problem and I drink behind the problem, now I got 2 problems. You know what I mean? So you're multiplying. So, for what I'm getting at is like, you know what? There are a lot of reasons why I talked myself for years into like pursuing the stuff that I did out of, being Irish, out of being in hip hop, out of all of the G code stuff and all that. It's all bullshit, man. I needed help a long time before I asked for the help, and I was too ashamed and prideful to ask for it, and it nearly killed me. And so I tell people all the time, like, if you need help, be the first one you have to deal yourself in. It's not always the people who look like they got it most together are probably the people who could probably benefit from it most, or who are clearly struggling and they just can't tell you, hey, I need help. So I do a lot of welfare checks on that. I have to do it myself as well. It's the time I feel like the least amount of, when I'm feeling like shit, that's when I stop doing my gratitude list. That's when I stop going to my meetings. I could tell when I'm off my square, and that's when I need it the most. That's the irony in all of this. It's like, nobody gets to this shit on a winning streak. They really don't. It's like so my point is this, to your point, for years, I was like, well, what am I going to tell people? Like, I started with this and then I got there, then it all came crashing down and now I'm sober. Awesome. But there had to be a redemption story. For me, the Outsiders House Museum is a redemption story because it gives me a purpose that I lacked for 20 something years, because being in a band is not my purpose. To promote bands, massively bigger than me. Yeah. And what I do is serve a purpose. And what my purpose is to be the gatekeeper and the groundskeeper here, to allow people to come in and experience this legacy. It has nothing to do with me, except for the fact that, we've got the house and we did it. And I'm allowing them to see what I found, which was love and hope in her stories and in this movie. And I get to do that. And it's my deal with God, if you will, because in order to keep what I have to give it away. And that's like the crux and the weird part of 12 steps. That doesn't make sense, but it makes sense. And I have to be of service. I have to not look what I can get, but look what I can give. And that ain't easy because I come from the culture. And the culture is to get money, take money, and you know, accumulate as much shit as you can. And now I'm like, nah, I got to do the opposite. And the more I give, the more I get. And that's faith-based. You have to really be like, put your faith that that's going to work, because nobody wants to put it out and then maybe not get it back.
It happens. It's scary.
And I get it back. I know. And I get it back in ways I could never imagine. So I trust it now. I believe in it now. And for years, I walked aimlessly, faking it, thinking, oh, yeah, and didn't know what I was going to do. Next day to day, I was like, what am I going to do with my life? It doesn't make any sense. Even when money was coming in, even when I have side gigs, even when we're touring and stuff, like, this is not like, this is old. It doesn't feel real to me anymore. It's not where my heart's at. Yeah, this is where my heart's at. And it's given me something. Yeah. And so, so listen, it is what it is. It takes what it takes. And when you get to the place that you need to get to, you'll look back and be like, okay, it took all of that to get here. What I want to do is let people know that, like, you may not have to wait as long as I did to ask for help. There is hope, and there is things out there that can help you. And what I was looking for was what I was looking through. And what I'm looking through is skewed. So I couldn't recognize what it was. I need other people's help to tell me what it was. You understand what I'm saying? Yes, so I have to have a contact with people that I believe in and trust that can say, Danny, that's a great idea, except it's horrible. And you've done that before, and you'll run right into a brick wall. And I have to trust that they know better because they've seen me do this before. And then and put that to better use. So this is what it'll be, short and sweet, and less about the hijinks and all the crazy stuff, and more about, you know, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And that really is an AA. That's how we do it. And I just broke anonymity right there, but you understand, in 12 steps, that's how we do it. You know what I mean? And I'm in a 12-step program, and that's what we share, our experience, strength, and hope. And that's what I hope to share with people who are maybe not have my problem, but it can relate in different ways. So.
Dude, you had a huge impact on our lives, and you would continue to be someone that's an inspiration through the things that you do. I'd love to read the book. So when you get it together, please. I need the dirt. I want the insight. I know you don't want to tell
I'll give a little. No, I'm going to put it in there. You have to for context.
To,
but
you have to.
I just, again, there are people who put out, you know, some books are like,
I know. Yeah, you know. I want to know, like the stuff I like is like the memories of the moments.
No, of course. I have a lot of little nuggets that are, you know, believe me when I tell you, I was the I was my own best archivist. You know, like even the other band members are like, damn, man, I wish I would have saved what you saved. You know, and I got rid of a lot of the hard goods, if you will, like the posters and the records, and I slowly, you know, auction those off for this house and to do stuff like that and giving them to other fans or whatever. But I have photos and notes and memories of like stuff that people maybe don't even realize. And when I compare them to other people like Lethal, we talked recently about an event, and then I forgot an element. I was like, oh my God, you're right. How could I forget? Like, my man, you're blowing, like, we were bugging, we were laughing our asses off. So it's like, I'm going to check and balance with some people too, because I don't want to just be like, I remember it this way. I want to make sure that, you know, but there we had a wild ride and a wild time. And I don't know, like I said, that we live in a different world now where I don't think the things that we did and got away with and I did and got away with are possible now due to technology, cameras, tracking, cell phone, all of that. It's like, I did some stupid shit out there, and you know, and some of it funny, some of it not so funny looking back. But you know, I'm very much an open book and do not hold anything back. So I will never do that. I just, my intent is not to body other people or even the score by airing out some other people. That ain't my thing. And
you got to be kind of careful, because if you put it out there, you're going to create, like, it could be a problem moving forward. You know what I mean?
No, of course. And you know, so
be cool.
It'll definitely be.
My guy, this was amazing. This was like way more than I expected too. I want to talk about the Kid 90 a little bit. I was like, overall, I was just like, in my mind, I was like, when he was doing House of Pain in '92, he was dating Punky Brewster. Blew my mind, and I was like, and I just know that you had your hand in a lot of great stuff, and to hear this is just.
I will tell you this: when I first started hanging out with Punky Brewster, and you see a lot of that footage. I was actually dating Savannah, the porn star, and unfortunately she killed herself when we were a couple. So there's that's kind of stuff, like, you know, book stuff that you'd be like, what?
So you were talking to her.
So there's photos. I think she even showed a few, and she might even have made that list at the end. Shannon, where it was me, Soleil, and Shannon, AKA Savannah, the porn star. At the time, she was the biggest porn star in the world. It wasn't just like some chick who did porn. It was like the big. earn of so like I think maybe it's been so much time has elapsed since people remember that in our circle, and now people are like, what oh my god,
that's what I'm talking about.
So but that's the stuff in books, you know what I mean, like that there's Mickey Work stuff, there's Outlaw Bike stuff, there's a lot of stuff, there's manufacturing and distributing stuff, there's and I ain't talking about records, I'm talking about, and people know there's a lot of stuff in there. And again, only to illustrate that, you know what, that it's a dead end, and it nearly killed me. And you know, if you're an addict and alcoholic, there's three things promised: jails, institution, or death. If you don't figure it out, and there is hope, and there's not one way to just do it. The way I did it is what I want to explain to people, and it's worked for me, and it's worked for countless thousands and hundreds of thousands of others. There are many ways, but at least as a living testimony, I want to tell people, hey man, it works if you work it, and that's what I was taught, and so that's 100%. What I want to give back.
I lost my father to addiction, to alcoholism, and we always wanted him to do the program.
Me too.
And he just wouldn't do it. And so when the way you talk about it is there's a necessity. You're a cool guy. People look up to you, and you made it. It's a cool thing to be involved with the program. It is. You know what I mean? I've seen a lot of people save their lives from Slane and you, and they were doing a lot more than just drinking. You know what I mean? Like, so very cool, man. Very cool. Thank you for coming on today. I mean, dude, what can I say? I mean, and said it, bro. This is amazing.
Well, I mean, it's been a strange and wonderful trip.
Yeah. Congratulations, my friend. Good luck in Tulsa, and
come out and see us anytime. The museum's open on the weekends. We do students who are reading the books. They come through Mondays through Fridays, 50 to 100 at a time. And we do special events, and we're just going to keep doing weekends until we can get a full-time staff and get it all business-like.
We have to go to Tulsa.
Outsiders House, burger joints,
museum, the whole Route 66. Get your kicks. Come on.
Yeah, man.
All right. Thank you, Danny Boy. House Pain, the Coka Nostra.
I appreciate you,
my brother.
Appreciate you, Danny.
Good talking to you, man. Have a great one. Talk soon. Hey, stay gold.
Yo, that was amazing. I'm absolutely amazing.
So dope.
Dude,
so dope.
I didn't want to cut him off because he's going with nothing but gold. Like,
no, straight gems. He was like and even looking back, because that was like, you know, our era as kids growing up. Like, I remember handing my father, like, yo, Dad, look it's an Irish rap group. And he was like, all right, you can listen to them. And all the other shit, like, you know.
Put the black guys down. The Irish guys. Yeah. I mean, they understand our problems.
He was like the first like hip hop record that my father would be like, all right, put that on. What's going on with that?
Wow, bro, that was awesome. Big shout to Danny. Big shout to Everlast, Lethal, the whole House of Pain, Slane, the whole of Coka Nostra, Leeds, everybody that's been involved since day one. That was episode 13 of the Mr. Peter Parker podcast. Apple, Spotify, we're on YouTube. Big shout to Manteca. Look at this, my man Crime Apple with the joint. You see me? I'm back.
Yes, I seen you.
I'm here.
I seen you, bro. Go get it. Let's go.
That's it. Coming up, we're gonna be talking to my man Andre Seamers. He's an artist from Minneapolis area. He was on MTV. We're gonna talk to him coming up, I think, tomorrow. And working on some other interviews. Got some things. Maybe Derek Angeletti, maybe the Mad Rapper. See if we get D-Dot on the show.
Ooh.
Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Stay gold, Pony Boy. I'll talk to you soon.
Amen.